no information. They don't want information, and
they hate it.
Yes, of course they do.
They hate the release of information.
They don't want the people to know.
That's what's behind it. They want everything in the dark.
He's an Aussie bloke, that.
That's right.
Julian Assange.
Yeah, no, he's a hero. And the thing is, the journalists and whistleblowers go to jail, and the people that commit these crimes, they're running free.
Yes.
What kind of country is this? What kind of world is this? That's really dangerous.
I call the government legal criminals because they can do what they like and get away with it.
They don't care about the Constitution, the laws. That's why
legal criminals.
That's exactly right.
But you get a guy like that, throw the key away.
News out regarding what's going on with Julian Assange. They're in Belmarsh prison in Britain, which is called the Guantanamo of the UK. We have heard from a couple of people regarding his conditions of imprisonment and regarding his health. We did hear from Niels Meltzer, though what he has said is limited because of certain issues regarding privacy of medical issues. But of course he has said something about Julian Assange being one of the worst cases of psychological torture he has ever seen. Of course, if you don't know what that is, that's basically what happens if you run on adrenaline for too long. It's the same in a different context as battle fatigue, and that's what he's suffering from. Now, one of the things we learned from Niels Meltzer is that Assange has been isolated in the medical wing continuously since May 18th. Okay, so he's been in the medical wing continuously since that date. Now, if you remember, there was a video released of Assange in prison. He was quite thin. He had lost an enormous amount of weight. We have an interview from John Pilger recently that was on Rupley. And John Pilger is saying that Julian's condition is very dangerous. He last saw Assange 10 days ago and he said he was shocked. Assange has lost even more weight. That is, more weight from that video that was pre-May 18th. Assange is now isolated. That is, he isn't even allowed to circulate in the medical wing. And Pilger is saying that they're imposing a regime that must be punitive. He quoted Assange as saying, "I see people walking by and I'd like to talk to them, but I can't." He's not even allowed, Pilger says, to phone his American lawyers, his U.S. lawyers, given that he's got a case that involves extradition to the U.S. Now, we also have an interview with John Shipton. John Shipton is Assange's biological father, and he had an interview on Australia radio. He's saying that Assange is in a cell 20 hours a day. He gets 2 social visits every month, and he gets to see his lawyers more often than that. He's saying that his son is emaciated and that his health is declining rapidly. He says, quote, "There is a danger that we will lose Julian if action is not taken to end his incarceration." Julian's brother Gabriel has also gone to visit him. He has written a letter to the Australian PM describing his circumstances of incarceration and his health. In it, he asked the PM to do something urgently because if not, quote, "we will lose Julian." This echoes what Pilger was saying earlier this month. He said, quote, "Do not forget Julian Assange, or you will lose him. I saw him in Belmarsh prison, and his health has deteriorated. He is isolated, medicated, and denied the tools to fight the bogus charges of U.S. extradition. I now fear for him." All right, so this is a situation that an editor, publisher, journalist is being kept in prison for revealing information about the crimes of the U.S. government. In one of the letters, so the question is, what do we do from here? I should add one more thing. Assange's stepfather who he knew as his father from when he was very young, also has cancer. His mother is having to tend to him. That is, Julian's mother is having to tend to her husband, and apparently he's dying, so she has apologized for not being available on social media or to respond to people because of that illness. So the question is, what can we do at this point? One thing we can do is write letters. Given that he's so isolated, he needs input from the outside, and he does respond to letters. So we can write letters. In one letter of response to somebody who wrote him, he was stressing, and I'm quoting from an article now that quoted part of this letter, he was stressing the importance of public protests in his defense, in Assange's defense, and he was suggesting that demonstrations demanding his freedom be held outside of offices and organizations that are, quote, not used to protest or would have difficulty defending against it ideologically. He listed a number of news publications, including the BBC and Le Monde, and Assange wrote, protests are very powerful for an office not used to them, even if everyone pretends otherwise. All right, so the situation is grim, but we have to continue this fight. If he is prosecuted under the theory that a whistleblower in relation to a journalist is a spy, if working with a whistleblower to publish the crimes of a government is espionage, we will not have any investigative journalism left in this country. We will have an official Secrets Act with the British have in their country. Namely, if a publisher wants to publish information that is deemed by the government to be secret, the UK government can simply say, no, that's secret, you can't publish it. This is what we're headed for in the United States. We need to do something to protect investigative journalism. Our Bill of Rights is being neutralized step by step. We are losing our capacity to know what our government is doing. We need to protect investigative journalism. Get Julian Assange and Chelsea Manning out of prison.
Thank you. Oh, boy. Good. Thank you, David. You're so good.
Whichever.
So we're here today to demand the immediate freedom of Julian Assange and Chelsea Manning.
Publisher in prison.
Why is this journalist in prison? Why is this publisher in prison? The reason is the U.S. government, both Democrat and Republicans, want to keep secret the crimes of the United States. Chelsea Manning is being punished again because he released information that showed the U.S. was engaged in war crimes in Iraq. They were bombing and killing innocent people, journalists and other people in Iraq. These are war crimes that go unprosecuted. The U.S. government is involved in terrorizing people around the world. The U.S. government wants to go into a trade war against the Chinese, trade war against Europe. We're talking about a world war. Behind the decline of U.S. imperialism is a drive for dictatorship. That's what's going on here. We are threatened with world war because this system, this capitalist system is bankrupt. They want to blame the Chinese, blame the Europeans, blame Canada even for this economic crisis. The economic crisis in this country is caused by capitalism. That's what's caused this economic crisis. And when capitalism goes into crisis, they blame immigrants. They blame Latinos. They blame Jews. They blame minorities. That's really what's going on. And Julian Assange and Chelsea Manning showed what was going on. They showed that the United States was involved in war crimes. We have to stop these war crimes. We have to free Julian Assange and Chelsea Manning.
In a letter written in May, but just published last week, Assange stressed the importance of public protest in his defense. He suggested that demonstrations demanding his freedom be held outside of offices of organizations which are not used to protest and would have difficulty defending against the ideologically. He went on to list a number of news publications as possible targets. Assange wrote, "Protests are very powerful for an office not used to them, even if everyone pretends otherwise." Okay, at Julian Assange's behest, let's protest and write letters to these gatekeepers in this new era of Operation Mockingbird. Gatekeepers that we've grown to trust. Let's question them and challenge them. Amy Goodman, Project Censored, KPFA in general, other than Dennis Bernstein, who is remarkable. The Intercept. Where have they been for the past 8 years on Julian Assange? Silent or much worse? Freedom of the Press Foundation, founded by Julian. It was founded by Julian, but the Freedom of the Press Foundation then abandoned him by denying him the funds raised to defend persecuted journalists. Let's question these organizations. This is what the CIA calls the compatible left. Establishment, intelligence compatible. We think of them as us. So they go unchallenged. I'm sorry, this music is so loud for me, I can hardly think.
From both sides.
So they go unchallenged. But they are the ones that we should be questioning and challenging and protesting regarding their lack of support for Julian, and by extension, their lack of support for us, the people, and our freedom. These are the organizations that, as Julian says, are not used to protest and would have difficulty ideologically defending their silence. This is where Julian says that we can have them be most effective.
Julian Assange is a world historic publisher who invented a way for people to do truth-telling without being caught for whistleblowing. And he's in prison in the most harsh conditions for the crime of journalism. We must protect Julian Assange, and we must protect Chelsea Manning, who is in prison as well.
Whistleblowers!
Stop the war on journalists and whistleblowers!